read.
Denise's.
Yeah,
Oh,
it was the story of their most recent launch where they made 831,000 in one launch, and she's gone through. I think he's written it by the tone.
Yeah.
But it's a really good learning piece about Yeah, about launching and to-dos and not to-dos and.
Oh, cool. Where's that on her Facebook? Or
it's running as a Facebook ad at the moment. So now you can't see Chin.
It's because of that thing.
It's because the angle, that's why I always end up going lower, because it's the only way you can get the angle facing up.
I just need to put something in that back part. That's all. It's because of your arm. Yeah. Okay, so lift it. You just get the arm up. Does that help?
Yep.
It's because of that angle. Otherwise, I've got my camera, which is that Marlon gave me, which is even better. Why don't we use that?
If you want.
And then it doesn't matter about the arms. Have you got a USB?
Yep.
Because this camera is super clear.
I love how he came to Australia Day with his whole bag full of techno tricks. How do you turn our camera off though?
So you just swap cameras. Oh, you're recording here. I'll just stop recording.
Now, it was just, we didn't want to record random stuff earlier. Can I shut your emails down, please? So that they stop making reminder noises.
Don't you love doing interviews with other people? Like this with Mark. Mark and I, when we do it, we share a set of headset, like headphones. And
well, Michelle's very good. She lets me steer the techie because I get really. Okay, we're all good. We're all live. So we are doing an official welcome and good morning and hello, Denise.
hi.
From our location to yours, which is not that far away probably as a bird flies, but we were already talking about how much we love the surfboard in the background there. So you might want to, if you have a story or two to share about that, feel free to do that.
I do. So I love Camilla clothes. And I met her in Sydney at an Oprah event a couple of years ago, and she was so lovely. And I remember asking her, I said, how did you get into the kind of this Oprah world, and how did you, dress her for this event and all this kind of stuff? And she just said, I had it on my dream board for so long. And I loved that. And so I remember when I bought, my first Camilla thing, it felt like such a manifesting moment. And then they do surfboards too. So yeah, so Mark bought this for me for, I don't know, my birthday or anniversary present or something like that. So it's such a beautiful anchor to have in my office of, of manifesting. And it reminds me to dream bigger. And I love it. I don't think I'll ever take it in the ocean. It's not that kind of surfboard, but it's just, a beautiful anchor. And I'd love to talk about anchors a little bit today as well, about how they can help you with your manifesting.
Great, because today is all about your money energy and thinking about the science and spirituality of money, which people don't often associate with the word money. And we were curious about, for people who are listening, and we can see you in Facebook land, people starting to join us.
Yeah, hi everyone who's jumping on the live stream.
Yeah. But when you hear the word money, what does it make you think? And yeah, maybe you'd like to even start there about, you work in money mindset. When most people hear the word money, what is it that it brings up for them?
Well, the thing is, for like our generation of women, or women who are kind of in business at the moment, our role models growing up around money were quite negative ones, really. So if you didn't know anybody who had money in your real life, the only interaction that you would have had, or thoughts or feelings, would have been TV and movies. And in TV land, it was Dynasty and like rich bitches. But even growing up watching DuckTales, did you guys watch DuckTales with Scrooge McDuck?
No.
He was the only kind of rich, like kind of thing that I was exposed to from a very young age. Scrooge McDuck. His name was Scrooge. And you think of like, movies and things like that, like Richie Rich or anything that had wealthy people in it. It was always depicted in one particular way. It was big shoulder pads, fancy hair, diamonds, quite a snooty kind of attitude. And I think it's what's different a little bit now is that there are more people talking about money now. So you can see that you can be rich and be any kind of way that you want. You can be rich and environmentally friendly. You can be rich and ethical. You can be rich and spiritual. Those things do not have to be mutually exclusive. But if you grew up watching Dynasty on one hand and Mother Teresa, impoverished kind of person on the other side, and it's just like, oh, that's my choice. I can be a rich bitch, or I have to give up everything and be a nun to be a good person. So yeah, you can
say
yeah.
on that, I remember when I was growing up, there was no possibility you could be rich and nice. Those two things just did not go together in the one sentence. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. And if you think of some of the cautionary tales around that, the only way the rich bitch got nice, I'm thinking of the movie Overboard with Goldie Hawn, is that she had to go through some really unpleasant experiences and lose her memory and, you know, like almost be abused. And then she was like, oh, maybe I should be nice to people. And so you think of some of those messages that you were told, and it's like, well, rich is something that's completely far out from me, outside of my awareness. You have to be mean, or something bad's going to happen to you to humble you into being a nice person.
The dark night of the soul.
Can I ask a question just around terms that are used, I guess, within the industry? I'm really interested in the difference between using the word rich and using the word wealthy. And in your mind, do they mean different things, or are they interchangeable?
You know, I do think that they're interchangeable, but I think what's important about this is to find a word that resonates for you, because some people love the word abundance, but then some people go, well, what does that mean? You can have an abundance of anything, but, you know, not necessarily rich. So sometimes the nicey kind of words can be a little bit of a cop out for people, but they also can be a gateway into just feeling better about having more in your life, having an abundance of something in your life. So I don't know. I think sometimes there is a little bit of a sense that rich might be a bit more new money and wealthy might be a little bit more old money. But I also think that's our conditioning as well.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So we'd ask people some of the questions that they might have leading up to talking to you today. And one of them was about just money and energy and money blocks that might come up for people. So even if they desire things, but then find their own resistance. Or a few people I've talked to even said things like, I get to a certain level and I almost stop myself from going further. Maybe you could share a little bit about your experience with.
Yeah. So I've worked with over 6,000 people in my course and many more thousands of people who write to me all the time or on my newsletter list. And I really see there are three quite universal blocks, and people might have heard me talk about this before, but what's interesting about these universal blocks is that you never really graduate from them. You just have to find new ways of dancing with them at different levels of your business. Okay, so the first one that's so universal across cultures and ages and everything is this feeling that you have to work really hard to make money. That money is an effort thing, and an effort-based thing. And so a lot of people beat themselves up. Oh, if I could just work harder, or maybe I'm not ambitious enough, or it's going to be too hard, so what's the point? And a lot of that has come from, you know, like, for example, our generation, right? We grew up with no phones, no internet. If you had to have a business back in the 70s, 80s, even the 90s, if it was a physical business, it was in your town. You couldn't really ship anywhere else. And anyone whose parents had a business, it was long hours, lots of physical work. You know, if you had something that you shipped out, you probably had to do it all yourself. Nowadays, you can have a physical based business and never touch a single part of it, from the manufacturing to the delivery to the fulfillment to the customer service. Everything can be outsourced. So we still have that kind of 70s, 80s mentality that you have to work really hard. But the way it manifests for us now is that if things are too easy, it feels like we're cheating. Yeah. It feels like we're disrespecting like the work of our, you know, family members or our parents. And it kind of just feels icky. And so it might show up for people where they're procrastinating easy wins in their business because, say, for example, and you do this work, you know, so much, AJ, where it's like, well, what are your strengths and what are you good at? And then what I find is that entrepreneurs go, well, but that's too easy. I can't make a business out of that. Like, that's just, everyone knows how to do that. Well, that is still that symptom of it has to be really hard. For other people, it manifests as not outsourcing and building a team, feeling like they have to do everything themselves, or just sabotaging things to make it harder. And so you might think, oh, cool, I'll get over that. I still have that block all the time. And so that's what I'm saying, where that block, it will follow you. It doesn't matter if you have another zero on your income, you still have to be vigilant about it. So, and that's a really big one. And I find my American clients have it a little bit different to the Australian people. For America, I mean, hustle culture is revered, you know, like, and so if you're not burning out, you're kind of seen as a bit of a weirdo. Whereas in Australia, the work hard thing is, you have to work hard, but you have to be a battler about it. And you can't be seen to want it too much.
Yes. Or you become a wanker.
Totally. So it's like, you got to work. Sorry, what did you say, Michelle?
And we don't want to be wankers.
No.
Well, and that's that whole convict mentality still, that you can't get too far ahead, and yet you've got to be seen to be working for it. Don't have a silver spoon in your mouth.
And I'm interested, Denise,
Exactly.
was it off the back of that and those sorts of experiences that you wrote Chillpreneur, or did that come from somewhere else?
Well, I always wanted to write a business book, because people do ask me, you know, my philosophy on business or how I run my business, but actually it came from a very specific experience. And let me just grab my book so I can talk to this. Okay, so this is where this book was born. I had just had my second baby, and you know, when you're sitting around and it's like, I'm going to read all of those books that have been piling up for a year. And the first book I picked up was Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss. And I love Tim's books. I totally do. But they are, you know, quite male dominated. And he tells a story in that book about this man who did a daily podcast. And he woke up every morning at like some crazy hour to finish the edits of his podcast that he'd done the day before and have it out by 8 o'clock. And then he went to work and he worked all day and he worked on his next podcast. And then right at the end, it was like, and then I go home and I spend an hour with my baby and my wife. And I just went, oh, he's got a baby and he's still doing a daily podcast. That couldn't have like gone to like a weekly podcast, you know, every 2 days. And then it said, and then my wife goes to bed at 9 o'clock and I go to my office from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. I sleep on the couch and I get up and do it again.
Oh.
And yeah. And sometimes stories like that are told because it's like, this is what it takes. And look at me doing what it takes to be successful. Mm-hmm. And I went, and I loved the rest of the book in so many ways. I just went, oh my God, that is not success in any way. And so because the 4-hour work week was such an influence on me starting my business, I kind of felt like I wanted Chillpreneur to be 4-hour work week, but for like, not necessarily lazy people, but for lazy people or for people who you've got other things going on. You can't do that. You know, like we go through a stage where we have kids, or AJ, you're caring for your parents a lot. You know, you want to go to the beach occasionally and go to yoga. Like life doesn't have to just be about hustle. So that's the exact moment I wrote that book.
Can't agree more. And I think even the term lazy starts to label it, but you know, everything's that choice. And that's what I think money and the energy around money is, you know, it's just a currency to measure stuff. Years ago, tulips were worth more than money in Amsterdam. You know, it's just a currency to exchange. And yet, out of all the things that we can touch and feel in the world, it's one of the things that we have the most hang-ups and labels around, isn't it?
And it's really interesting because if you think about it as a choice, it would be logical to make a choice to be a chillpreneur. Why would you not make that choice? You'd have to be crazy not to make that choice, right? And yet so many of us allow ourselves to be caught up in our own notions of what we think is right and wrong, that we put ourselves in this prison, you know, in the hustle prison, for want of a better description.
Absolutely. Which brings me to the second most universal block. That's a good segue, is I have to give up something for money. Okay. And this is different for everyone. So I want to hear from you guys in a sec what yours is. But we've got this thing. It's like, I can have love or money. I can have a good relationship with my kids or money. I can be healthy or have money. I can have integrity or have money. And so we feel like we have to give up something. And where it comes up a lot for women, and particularly in business, but just heart-centered people in business, is I can help people or make money, but I can't do both. I have to choose. And this is where people get really stuck on what to charge. They give away things for free. They over deliver. They worry that people will think that they're greedy if they charge, because they think, well, look, I'm in my business to help people. And you've probably heard people say this, right? When you help people with their business and they go, oh, I don't care about the money. I just want to help people. And that's great. I know where their heart is, but it really plays into this, this feeling that we have that we can't have all the things. And I've definitely experienced that. I don't have the kid one because I think, oh, my kids will be fine. I'm always like, they're privileged. They're going to be totally fine. So I don't worry about that at all. But mine is, I worry that if I make more money, people won't think that I'm nice and down to earth. And this has followed me throughout my whole journey. I had this when I had my first full-time month in business, when I made $225. I thought, oh, people aren't going to, think that I'm nice and down to earth if I ask them things. I had it when I made my first million. I had it when I've made my, couple of million that I make a year now. And I would love to make 10 million a year. And I know that that block is still there. Oh, it's fine for me to make this. But if I made that, oh my God, then I would be really out of touch with the people. So that's mine, and it will follow me forever. So Michelle, what do you reckon yours is?
I don't know. I would say being healthy and being rich, which is a weird connection, isn't it? So in other words, the richer I am, the less healthy I would be. And it's probably connected, like if on the back of what you're saying, it's probably connected to still having some level of belief that it has to be hard.
Always comes back to that. And also it could be previous experience. Have you ever had a job where you experienced burnout before?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Or a business, or you've experienced in the past. And so sometimes we have evidence that kind of supports our fear. And what about you, AJ?
For me, I feel like I have to give up being totally transparent and honest, in that I have some friends and family who would be offended at what I earned, or start to go, why are you giving me money? Or, how dare you, kind of thing. And so it's being honest about what I earn and make and create. And so starting to not share that at the family barbecue or at a friend's barbecue, because I just want to, a bit like you, I just want to be down to earth and I just want to chat to people, but it feels like having to quieten it.
And you know what? It's the same thing I said at the start. If we've never seen examples of that, like, we don't really know how to be with that, and so everyone's got to find what their thing is, and it could be multiple things, and then find a role model, because sometimes we just go, but it's true, Denise, I can't be this and rich. You go, well, there must be someone in the world that you can, just to give yourself a glimmer of possibility of, well, if she can do it, maybe I can do it. And then the other part of that is being a role model for other people. A lot of people tell me that they love that I talk about having kids, because that's given them a role model around kids and money. This is why it's so important, I think, as entrepreneurs, to show up as we are, because someone might see that and go, well, she isn't perfect, or she's got an accent, or she isn't a size 2, maybe I can do that as well. And that's the gift we give all of us by just showing up a little bit.
So we've got a whole heap of chats going on in the Facebook group, and I'd love to share a couple of people. So
yes,
Lisa
please.
was saying she'd be scared of having too much time on her hands. Love you, Lisa. Marissa says, or if you make tons of money from one income stream, feeling chained to that then. And Duane's saying, I'd have to give up time for myself. Yeah.
Isn't that funny? Because if you were really to think about some of these fears that we have, some of them are really irrational, right? Because it actually takes up a lot of energy and time being broke.
Yes.
Like it really does. And so we fear it, but some of the time it's completely irrational, or it's just our own stuff, or we've just never seen an example of somebody, you know, doing or being who we want to be.
And I know for me, as a property investor, there was some stretch areas. So as the zeros went up and as it grew bigger, there was more in managing it sometimes, and yet it wasn't. There was a little bit of complexity. You had to learn a bit more. You might have to get other advisors. But I started to think, oh, I've got to make bigger decisions around risk and around insuring things and all of those things. And so there was this level of, I've got to learn more or grow myself in order to manage the money. So yeah, there were some challenges around that, and not wanting to lose the simplicity of life.
Absolutely. It's that thing of like the big girl panties.
Yeah, and I'm just remembering a story of one time when I put on my big girl panties, and that was when I changed my daily rate for a certain amount to another amount that was like more than double or whatever I'd had previously. So it was quite a big change in one step. And I had all this fear that my clients and people around me would say something or they'd object or whatever. No one said a single thing. I should have done it like 10 years earlier, because seriously, no one said a single thing. And every time I think of that now, I go back and I go, put your prices up, put your prices up, put your prices up. You're delivering the value, you know. And I think that's your big girl panties, is realizing what value you actually have to change someone else's life.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And you can hire great people to help you with any problem. It's so much easier having money when you want to solve problems. Like I can throw money at a problem. So much easier. Which actually brings me to the third one. And this one is more money, more problems. And so it's a super useful exercise. If you write down what you think are the problems that you think you'd have, or we call them the unintended negative consequences in Money Boot Camp. But these are the fears. Some of them are founded, some of them are completely ridiculous. But you've got to get them all out, because they do live in you, and it's quite an insurmountable thing, I think, when you're like, why can't I just do my thing? Why can't I just write my book? Or why can't I just release that program? Because you've got all these unacknowledged fears, and at the moment it doesn't feel like it would be safe for you to do that. So if you were to think of all the problems that you would have if you suddenly added, I don't know, an extra 2 zeros on the end of your income, and some will bubble to the surface straight away, and it might be, oh God, my deadbeat cousin will ask me for money, or you know, it'll be complicated, I'll get in trouble with the tax man or something like that. Those things will bubble to the surface straight away, but then you'll continue to find them. And you know what a big one was for me, which is so funny because I'm sitting looking at the ocean now. I used to go, what if there's a tsunami? And I would think about it all the time, and I'd be like, oh, what would I do if there's a tsunami and I can't live near the beach? And it sounded really silly, but it really did stop me from taking action to make more money, because I knew I wanted to live on the beach. And so it was like a push-pull thing inside me. And you guys have already mentioned a few that have come up for you, but I want to hear if there's any others that have bubbled up, or people share in the comments in the group. And I want to hear like a sensible one, and I want to hear your weirdest one as well.
So everyone in the Facebook land out there, please feel free to pop them in. Faith saying she loves the big girl panties. It's not about me, it's about appreciating the value. And she said that's definitely a fear for her. Kelly's looking forward to manifesting a more simplistic lifestyle. Yeah, money can buy you simplicity in some ways.
Well, you're a good example of that, AJ.
Yeah. And the less stuff you have, sometimes the less there is to manage. And the more freedom you have to go, now I can be at choice with what I do with my money.
These comments interesting.
Yeah.
Someone just said I might have to be more responsible, and I would have so much power to do good too. And I think that's a really important point, I think, because a lot of the times, because we're so caught up in our own self-limiting beliefs, we don't see what it is that we can offer to everybody else and how we can impact people around us. And I just think that's the ultimate selfishness, is for us to be so stuck in our own blocks that we're not getting out of our own way so that we can actually help all these people around us. It's kind of ironic.
And so what are some of your tips for people overcoming some of their money blocks?
Okay, so what's really important, I think, is to have somewhere to have these discussions, because I think 80% of the work is awareness. And it's awareness of your patterns, it's awareness of your stories and beliefs, because that will shift and change some of the actions that you do. You know, if you can acknowledge that you don't feel safe about making more money because you think something bad's going to happen, there's a couple of things that you can do. So one, I mean, say you wrote that big list of all the bad stuff, you can then sort that if you want to. So you can sort that into things that you can do something about. You know, so it could be that you go, you know what, I'm really worried that someone's going to sue me. I can put some terms and conditions in my contracts. And so you can kind of go, oh, well, I'm going to tick these off one by one and come up with a plan. And then for ones that are kind of a little bit futury, you can go, well, I'm going to park that fear and come back to it later. So I used to have, my little brain would go, what if you became so successful that Oprah wanted you to do a show, but then she needed you in hair and makeup at 4:30 every morning? And I would be like, I'd lie awake. This is like my first year of business, right? When I hardly made any money. And I would just, it took up so much energy, because I'd be like, how am I going to say no to Oprah? I don't want to travel to Sydney every day and be in hair and makeup for that. It was so silly that I needed something just to act as a bit of a pattern interrupter. And so I would just be like, let's cross that bridge when we come to it. Let's cross that bridge when we come to it. And you can do that for things. If you're worried about your first big tax bill, you'd be like, I really want to make $1 million, but that tax bill is going to be, you just go, we can figure that out when we get there. Figure that out when we get there. So some of those things you can put a plan into place. Some of them you just have to park. But when you have a space, so this could be your mentor, your coach, your business buddy, a community like my Money Boot Camp, it's really important to have a space to talk through those fears, and also to be surrounded by people who are at different levels of that, because then you can share and go, wow, well, I restructured my business and here's the accountant I use. Or you can see someone who's a couple of steps ahead of you and they go, oh, well, I did this and it's nothing to worry about. And so that's why that community is so important. Otherwise, you're just going to be sitting in your house stressing about problems that you don't have.
As you're talking, I'm just thinking of, we titled this talk all about money and spirituality. And so I want to ask you a couple of questions, but I want to kind of paint a picture firsthand. On one hand, it seems to me that when you work through spiritual challenges that you have, that clears you up to make more money. And on the other hand, I observe a whole bunch of people who I would consider to be very spiritual people who have no money and are not good with money at all. And even if they're running their own businesses, they don't seem to know how to commercially behave in such a way where they make money. So I'm really interested in how this whole notion of spirituality and money connect, or if one drives the other, or how do you think that all plays together?
So I'm going to come back to that first one as well, about you have to work really hard to make money, because a lot of creative spiritual people that I see, they were really shamed for being that way from a young age. And so if you speak to some of them, they'll tell you that their parents were like, well, we want you to be an accountant. And that's fine if you want to be an artist, but you'll never make a penny out of it in your whole life. And so a lot of those people are living that truth almost like a vow of poverty, a vow of chastity, of, like this really strongly held, boundly held vow that they've taken, that they will take this other path because they've agreed to give up money and to give up this system of money, because there was no role models for them about how they could do both. And I really think that comes down to it in so many ways. And so they've never been able to develop that sense of almost like healthy relationship with money, because it has to be so extreme. It's one or the other. And I applaud those people who have, decided just to make a stand for creativity and make a stand for their spirituality. But now we can choose a different path. And it's okay to have both. And there'll always be outliers. There'll always be people who want to walk the path of the hermit And that's totally fine. I think that's totally fine. But there's the other sense there too of there's a story around a lot of creatives that if they are too comfortable, it'll scare away their muse. And they can only create out of desperation or creativity or resilience or resourcefulness. That's the word I was trying to look for, resourcefulness. And you know what? I resonate with that. I don't know if you guys do, but I'm really struggling with writing a book at the moment. And I was sort of saying to myself, because I'm too comfortable. I don't want to, I'm not hungry enough.
Yeah.
And I realized that I've got this story. Oh, you have to be hungry to be creative. You know, the hunger is the thing that creates the art, which is so not true, but it's so embedded in our life, you know. And again, it comes to that thing of I can have love or money. You know, some people listening might go, oh, I'm too comfortable. I'm, you know, in my relationship. I need to create some drama so then I can create. Because we can't have both. You can't be a happily married person and be a bohemian artist. So it's this whole thing, right? And I would love to hear if that's resonated with either of you around that, about, again, what do we have to give up? And we're not allowed to have it all.
There are people in Facebook land saying, oh my gosh, did you have ears in my childhood as a creative kid in a family full of accountants? I was totally told this. Someone else is saying, you know, you're so on the money with how creatives think. People are commenting about your keyless door entry, which I know is in your chillpreneur, about, you know, being able to go into your house without digging through finding keys. Yeah, what about you? Did you have anything come up for you personally from that?
Not specifically, I don't think, from that. But for me, it's always about, I think the connection with the spirituality conversation for me has always been, because I grew up in a very religious household, in a very conservative religious household. So there was a lot of value judgment about people who are rich or people who had more money that might have come to that church against like everybody else who was in that church. And it was a spoken about thing. It was actually talked about. So in many ways, not only did I pick up on that kind of lack mindset in and around that, but I also picked up some of that, you know, the way that you look at other people that have money is this. So I think the thing that really struck me from what you're just saying is how absolutely critical every one of our stories are that we are told from when we're tiny, and how that influences everything.
Quite absolutely. You know what's cool about the church too? I mean, they role model asking for the sale. Some churches pass around the collection plate 3 times during a service.
Yeah.
I'll ask for it.
What you were saying about creatives before, I know in my Leading Ladies group, I'm often teaching people how to package their IP, their own knowledge, and to become a speaker or a facilitator or an author or something like that. And interestingly, a lot of people then say to me, but I haven't overcome adversity. Like they're like, oh, but that person lost their arm and was in a car accident. Oh, but that person, you know, their mother died when they were 7, and that's what helped them become an author. And so a lot of people think they have to go through that struggle to be a creative. Like they feel that that's the story, that their life is not enough because they haven't had enough grief in order to.
And it's interesting, because I think one thing that I've learned over and over again, and I continue to learn it, is the more you judge your own message, the less value it brings. And the more you allow your message to come through in a really pure way and you open up yourself as a vessel, the more value it brings.
Absolutely. I mean, you can do so much good in the world with money, you know, and that's spirituality in action as well. And most of the people that I meet who have businesses, you know, we are doing it to help people, and it's okay to make money in that as well, because I mean, all the entrepreneurs I know, they donate money, they you know, build schools, they do all these amazing things with their money, because they are lying awake at night worrying about kids on the other side of the world. They're not sitting there going, oh, how can I screw over people tomorrow, or how can I buy another yacht while people in their neighborhoods are starving, you know. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with having material things, but there's also nothing, you know, you're not necessarily going to be serving the world by being broke either.
No. Yeah. Can you just talk to that, please? Because that is so important. And I think a lot of people just miss that point.
Yeah. Okay. So I see people go, you know, I want to help people in my business. And then they over deliver like crazy. And so actually their capacity for helping people is quite small, right? But they feel guilty. So their sessions with clients go for 3 hours instead of 1 hour. They answer people day and night and, you know, never ask for the sale. And so if you were to calculate how many people you could help, you know, maybe you could help. I met someone who saw 100 clients a week, and I was like, how? But if you were over delivering with all of those, say you could help 20 people a week, right? And so I always just say to people, just do the numbers around this. If you charge well for what you do, then you can buy back some of your time and energy to write a book that could help unlimited amount of people. You know, like if it's Kindle, it literally could help so many people without, you know, any additional costs or work. You could create some free blog posts. You could do a free Q&A every week. You could do some pro bono work. And so actually in the process of receiving, not just giving, but receiving as well, it becomes this beautiful, beautiful virtuous circle where you can help more and more people. And then the ripple effect of that just goes out and out. And so I always say to people as well, you don't have to teach money to spread this abundance feeling, because if you are strong in yourself around, you know, charging what you're worth and setting good money boundaries, that rubs off on your clients, on your kids, your suppliers, your team. I remember every single time I have a session with my videographer, he increases his prices because he just sits there and he's nodding while he's operating the camera. And then he just goes, actually, I need to raise my prices. And then that's going to have an impact on his industry, because that just that rising tide lifts all boats. And so if we want to see a better world, it does start with us, not just with us, but we have to be part of the solution and not perpetuate this feeling of constriction and poverty and not enoughness, because we know that there's enough money in the world to solve every problem of the world. It already exists. It's just in the hands of the wrong people at the moment. And I want it to be in the hands of women, minorities, people, you know, mums, philanthropists, spiritual people, meditators, minimalists, everyone, because that is going to change the world.
So there's a couple of things that come out of that for me, and one is boundaries, and understanding that value exchange and not over delivering, you know, at the expense of your own energy you talked about. And, you know, the one thing we can't get more of is time. And once we've spent that, you know, you can't get it back. And I know for me, it wasn't until I earmarked how much pro bono work would I do that I stopped feeling guilty if I had to say no to someone, because I actually did need to earn some money to pay the bills. And I had lots of charities asking for free work. And it wasn't until I went 30% of my work is pro bono or at a really discounted rate. And then I could measure that each month and just go, I'm full with my pro bono this month. You know, would you like to either pay or do you want to pick another month? And then I stopped exhausting myself. But I still see lots of people out there giving, which feels great. And there's such a thing as a generosity economy, but not if you start to resent it. So I'm interested in around your energy around that resentment that builds up when you feel like people then take advantage because you've got money now, so surely you should just give it to me for free.
Definitely. You know, I think it's funny when you might nail it in one area and then it will come up in another area, and boundaries have a little way of doing that. They're like water. They'll try and find that little, you know, little bit that they can flow into. And so I'll just give you a personal example. So I've been running my money boot camp for 8 years now, and I feel totally fine having boundaries in that group, in that space. I feel totally fine asking for money for that. But I never really thought of myself as a speaker. And I didn't, it's not my favorite thing to do. And I'm an introvert and all that kind of stuff. And so I totally discounted my value as a speaker, because I thought, oh, I can't charge for it if I don't really like doing it that much. Or I can't charge for it if I'm not like, because I don't prepare. I just turn up and just speak for like 90 minutes and like divine downloads flow through me. But I was like, but if I don't have really good slides and I don't really prepare, then I shouldn't charge for it. See how you start to justify it, all these things. And then I'm like, oh no, I'm an introvert, so I shouldn't really charge for it. And then because I didn't really want to do it, the only people who asked me to speak were like my friends. And so I'd be like, but they're my friends. I can't charge them for speaking on their stage. Yeah. So I had all these justifications for it. And this is what will happen. And I remember then my friendship group started to expand, because I'd be like, God, if it's my best friend, I'm not going to charge her to speak on my stage. But then what's the definition of a friend? Is it someone that you've like Facebook friends with, someone that you've maybe had drink with one time? So my definition of friend kept on getting expanded. And that's what happens with your boundaries, right? They just get a bit wobbly, and then you have all these exceptions. I realized too, I was thinking, well, I can't charge for speaking in Australia because like they're my mates, like they're my family. Yeah. And so I realized I had like the whole continent of Australia in my like mates rates exception group. And so for me, here's where it fell down. I went and spoke at someone's event, and it was just supposed to be, like a 45-minute speech or whatever. And then she's like, oh, well, we're going to, stick around because we're going to do hot seats, and then stick around. And my flight wasn't for a couple of hours. And I was like, well, I guess I may as well stay around. Like, I'm here anyway, totally discounting that is energy. That is life force. And I remember getting in the car after it, and I was like a little husk. I just went, and it wasn't because it was hard work. It's because the value wasn't there. And so she got all this excess value, and I got a deficit of value. And so it came from my life force energy, and I couldn't deny it because every part of my body hurt. And so I was just like, there's a real cost to that. And sometimes it takes you so many lessons until you hear that. And I still feel bad about charging for speaking. It's an area that I'm working on. And as I said, you might master it in one area and then it will come up in a different area, because those things are sneaky. They're super sneaky. So I want to hear from, people in the comments too. Is there one area that you just go, oh, I still struggle to charge for that?
So everyone in the Facebook land out there watching, we see there's lots of you online. Drop us in, what are some of your thoughts or questions that you have for Denise as well?
In the meantime, Denise, someone's asked a question about, they've said, I really need some guidance on how to guide my 16-year-old son. He wants to make money.
Oh, yeah. Okay, there's a book that someone wrote. There's a couple of books about kids and money. One is called The Opposite of Spoiled. But I think one of the finance gurus wrote a book with his daughter, and it might be like, one of the debt guys, those American guys who've got like books around debt and things like that. He wrote a book with one of his kids. If anyone can find that, I think it's David Back or Dave Ramsey, one of the Daves.
Mm-hmm.
One of the Daves. And so I think that's really good to have those conversations with kids and money, and be like, yeah, cool. Well, this is how I earn my money. What are some of your ideas? Because I was that teenage kid trying to make money. And I would do a garage sale, or, selling horse poop. So you can just like explain, like, this is how you make money. You find something or an idea and you offer it to somebody. If he's got tech skills, he could go on Fiverr, make graphics for people. Or I paid my friend Tammy's 8-year-old son to make graphics for me on Canva because he wanted to make some money, and so I think it's really cool as well to teach them that their entrepreneurial ideas come from them, and to try them, and to be okay if they don't work out, because a lot of my ideas as a teenager didn't work out, but my mum didn't shame me for it, and that's the important thing too. It's like, oh, well, Richard Branson's tried hundreds of different businesses. Maybe that's not your thing. Or maybe they, make $30 out of it and go, no, I don't want to do that anymore. Experimentation, right?
The whole idea of spaghetti on the wall and going 50% of what you throw on the wall ain't going to stick. So you got to keep throwing it on the wall. Yeah.
Exactly. And we know that ourselves. Like, how many businesses have you guys tried? And so, it's just, I think it's just the pleasure of making your own money. Give them that experience. And Mark used to he used to sell sweets at school, and I just think too, there's little things that they could probably do, of like at the beach at Merriweather in summer, just have a little ice cream thing. The council probably shut them down, but
it can be so resourceful. Another question I wanted to ask you, Denise, just yesterday, actually, I was having a look at one of your Facebook ads that you've got going at the moment about the story of your launch. And in particular, it was the story of a launch where you did 831,000 or something, if I got my numbers right. Be super interested in some of your insights into your own launching process and how that's changed over the years to become more efficient.
Oh, yeah, good question. I've been launching my first launch was in 2009. So what's that, 11 years ago. And I launched a course called the Raw Brides Transformation Plan. Raw is in raw food, bride. So it was when I was a raw foodist, and I had lost weight for my wedding with raw food. And so I think that's where some of it, the best business ideas come from, of like, I did this thing, let me show you how I did it. And I had one person on the course. And I think the difference between me 11 years ago and where I see people now is that I saw that as a success. I was thrilled. I was thrilled because that person paid me money to overcome so much resistance of writing that sales page, doing the graphics, all of those things, your first couple of launches, everything, you just like, this is terrible. Every tech problem happens. Like, it's just the worst. You're writing the copy just going, I hate this. Your computer crashes, all the things happen. And so all of that happened. And I was so proud of myself that I didn't give up, and I kept on going. And I never said, oh, only one person joined, I think I'm going to, I'm not going to deliver it. I delivered that program, and it was a live program. So it was, typical program. They got a video and a handout or whatever it is. And then we did a live call every week for 6 weeks. And I had to learn how to use the instant teleseminar back in the day. And it was all these different buttons you had to press. And I would see her on there, and she would never ask a question. And she listened to every single live call, and she never commented, and I was like, well, here's a question I had sent in from Lauren. And so the reason why I say that is because there's no real perfect way to launch. Like, you just tell people about your thing and you give them a link to join. It's all the stuff that happens in between of like, nobody wants to hear from me. This is so crap. I'm not meant to do this. And it's just persistence. And yesterday I had to record 4 pieces of audio, and each one was like 2 minutes. And my computer, the system that I used, shut down like 10 times. I used another system. It shut down like 3 or 4 times. And I was like, what is going on? My microphone wouldn't work. And I just kept on going. And I thought, you know what? I'm a persistent person. And that could be your mantra for launching, is that I'm a persistent person. And even if nobody joins, my God, you could have created an asset that could help thousands of people. And even though I only launched that program once, I never thought any of that was a waste. I was like, well, I've made a sales page now. Now I know how to do it. Now I know how to use instant teleseminar. Now I know how to set up a payment system. None of that is wasted, even if it's, your practice business. And so we just do the same. We just keep on telling people about what we do. And yes, now it's a bit more sophisticated. Now we do Facebook ads and, retargeting, but it's still about creating a thing and telling people about a thing and overcoming the resistance. That's the biggest thing.
And I guess in some ways, all those money blocks you talked about, overcoming them is part of that process. I know for me, I started down the journey of sales pages and that, and they don't sit with who I am and being a minimalist. I'm like, being a minimalist, I should have a page with all of this stuff that you scroll through. And so it started to become just, I'm just going to bang a message out and go, hey, if anyone's interested in learning this, you know, message me. And so, but I had to overcome some of that. It has to be hard. You know, I need to do what everyone else in the industry is doing. So it really is all of the chatter, isn't it? It's all of what is going on in our head. And money is just a way of identifying what's my stuff that I've still got to work on.
Definitely. You know, that work hard thing, what I see all the time is that people launch a program once, and then instead of building on that, they start from scratch the next time because they have to justify the work, you know, or it's like, oh, well, it doesn't count because everyone's seen that. I've been, my program's been the same for 8 years, and I still feel like that. Oh, I need to make it this, this, and this. And I'm like, but that's what people need. And I have to resist the urge to make it harder, make it more complicated. And actually, here's a good lesson that everyone needs to hear. Actually, our refund rates were creeping up, and they were getting up to like 15% or something. And I remember thinking, what's happened? And what I had done is I had overcomplicated a lot of the modules. I put in all this extra stuff, and so people were joining, looking at the list of things that they had to do, the list of videos and resources, and like, you know, each lesson I was like, here's 2 books that you could read about this. They were thinking, oh my God, I've got to do all this stuff. And so they were asking for refunds. And so when we were asking people, why are you asking for a refund? They'd be like, I don't have time for this right now. Right. They felt like they'd failed straight off the gate. And so what I did, I stripped out all that extra stuff. And then our refund rate's halved for starters. So that's money in the bank. That is, you know, a direct evidence of how over delivering and making things harder does not pay. And then the other thing that happened, I didn't change any of the content. I just literally stripped it out. People that round were going, Denise, it's just so much richer. Like, it's so deep. It's so deep and rich. And I was like, that is just the perfect illustration about how we try and make things harder, and because we don't feel like we're enough.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I know that there's such a temptation to add in because you're trying to demonstrate value. But what you're entirely missing is that value for most people is a simple pathway through a process that's very doable, not something that's overwhelming or that has 20 items when it could have 2 or,
So we've only got about 5 or 6 minutes left. I'm just conscious of time. There was another question, and Faith, I'm not sure if it's a question, but I'm going to share it in case Denise has got something she wants to add to it. So Faith has said she feels like she has so much value to give, and she's trying to put on her big girl panties and to reach out to organizations. But it sounds like there's some resistance there to that whole idea of selling herself, of literally putting herself out there and sharing her value. Do you have any tips for people that are, you know they've got a lot to give but are hesitating around that?
Absolutely. So I always think on the other side of it, right? Because I buy services and products and things like that all the time now, and I can see sometimes there's money blocks behind it, and I'm just like, just send me the invoice, love. Like, I'm just like, you've got expertise and I want to buy it. And so just think outside of yourself for a moment and just think, well, if it wasn't me and it was just like this avatar of me, how would I expect her to behave? She would just say, here's my thing.
Yeah.
Like, that's okay. Some people want it and some people won't. And I actually used that yesterday. I followed up something with a big organization, and I was just like, hey, can I help you with anything? You know, like that proposal I sent. And the fortune is in the follow-up, right? And so many people never follow up because they psych themselves out. And you can just be like, hey, can I help you? And I actually don't do, this sounds really rude, but often I don't do business with people on the first proposal because I want to see if they follow up. And no one ever does. So just think about that. Just take yourself out of the equation and just go outside and just see what do they want? they want you to follow up with a solution. They want a solution, or they don't. They're not like bitching about you. Oh my God, can you believe the audacity? The audacity that she had to talk about her thing. And sometimes it's the perfect solution at the perfect time. And they'll be like, oh, actually, I do need my windows done. Thank you. And then other times they're like, not right now. That's okay too.
And I think you came on a really spot on thing there, is timing. I've had lots of organizations that are like, don't reply to a proposal or something because right now they don't need it. But then if you stop following up, you may not pick up the time when they actually go, now we need that.
Absolutely.
If you're consistent in the way you show up for people, then when they're ready, they know how to buy and find you. A lot of people don't make themselves easy to buy.
They really don't. And this happened to me recently. I was, you know, when you're procrastinating and you're like, I need a whole brand refresh. And so I was looking online, and I saw this brand lady, and it was like, you know, download my free brand pack about, you know, are you ready to rebrand or something. It was really, really well done. But then it was just like, hey, just reach out if you want to work with me. There was no like, click here to, you know, book into my calendar for a free. There was no follow up to that automated email at all. And so I just forgot. And then like, I was just like, oh, I'll just play around on Canva. Oh yeah, cool. I've just did it myself. She had this little window for me to give her like $7-8 grand.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't there. And then, not saying that she's bad, but often we do that because we just think, oh, they'll reach out if they want me. And yes, some people will, but some people just need that little nudge of, hey, remember that thing? Same with in a launch. Those last emails on that last day, someone might have been fully intending to buy, but they were just about to buy and their kid or their dog pooped on the floor. That's a personal example, by the way. This happens to me. That happens when you're ready to buy and then you're like, can you not draw on the wall, please? Yeah. And so that reminder email of, oh gosh, yeah, I forgot I was about to sign up for that thing. That's who you're sending those reminder emails for, not the people who are like, how dare you? I'm unsubscribing. It's not for them. It's for the scatterbrained person who meant to get their wallet, or something happened, or they just forgot, or they meant to, or it was the first time they saw it. You know, sometimes you send that last reminder email and they go, oh, thank you, because the other ones went into their spam folder.
Yeah. And even also detachment to that, then to detachment to the sale. I know I find it a lot when I'm talking to someone then one-on-one and they're curious about a program or something, and I'll have a chat to them on the phone and I'll be really clear about it's not for you if it's this, this and this. And if that's where you're at, I've got 3 or 4 other coaches or people I could refer you to. And then people end up buying because they go, you were so not trying to sell me your stuff, so clear. But you were super clear about what you can do and what you can't do. So there is this level of love money but detach, kind of, in a way as well.
100%. You know, every launch I go, universe, if my work will bless somebody, send them my way. But I still have to send out the emails. I still have to, you know, I still have to tell people. And so I think that is a really good lesson of just being like, you know, the people who are meant to see my work will see it, but you've also got to couple that with marketing is manifesting. Marketing your work is manifesting clients and manifesting money. So you have to show up to and put yourself in the best position to receive that abundance that the universe wants to send you.
Yeah. And the universe is so generous and wants to send us so much abundance. That's true. Okay, for our last question, Denise, we've got something just a little bit more philosophical. So someone's asked you, so many women feel like they are, I think it's supposed to say they are not enough. Why
totally.
Is that?
Well, centuries of conditioning for women in particular, that we're not allowed to charge. We weren't allowed to, I mean, your grandmother might not have been able to have a bank account, have a credit card,
vote.
You know, to vote. Absolutely. So in America at the moment, they're celebrating 100 years of white women voting, but it took decades and decades for other minority women to be able to vote. Black women, I think, were the last. And so it's not that recent history that women were completely disenfranchised around money. And actually it's still happening in the world today. And so we don't have generations of role models that we are enough. We've been told for a long time that, you know, that there's something wrong with us, or that we should give away things for free. If you're a healer and you come from a long line of healers, you were probably receiving eggs and honey for your work. And so you weren't allowed to touch money. And sometimes there were stiff penalties for women having money. And so that all lives in us. And then if you want to get really philosophical as well, there's the witch wound that lives in so many of us women, that if we speak up, if we speak our truth, then bad things will happen to us. We will get, you know, literally burnt at the stake. That lives in us. And how many of us have seen that in movies and TV? Like that is something that is Game of Thrones. It was in Game of Thrones, you know, that we all watched. And so we have to be so gentle with ourselves and like really soothe our scared little hearts that something bad is going to happen. And that feeling is real, and you have to acknowledge that. You can't just push it away. And the unlearning might take time. Some days you might feel enough, other days you might not feel enough. And that's okay. You can just do little baby steps on those days. And surround yourself with women who mirror that for you. Whether it's a coach, you know, a business bestie, someone who will tell you that you're enough, because you probably didn't get it as a kid, and you probably have to overcome a lot to believe it. And you're not looking for perfection. Perfection is not the goal. Absence of fear is not the goal. Just enoughness around who you are. And sometimes your desire just has to be a teeny bit bigger than your fear that day and that moment. And that's enough too.
What a beautiful quote. Your desire just needs to be a tiny bit bigger than your fear. That's going to be a quote in your next book.
And not every day, and not 24/7.
Yeah.
Just in those moments when you're taking that action, that's enough. Because it's just so much perfectionism. We feel like we have to, you know, if I don't feel it every day, then I'm not meant to be successful. And if I don't feel confident 100% of the time, I'm not meant to be successful. If it's not perfect, there's no point putting it out.
And again, it all comes back to valuing self. I see so many people say, I feel guilty if my husband's doing stuff around the house. And I'm like, it's his house as well. It's not
his kids too.
Yeah.
You know, I laugh about this, but there's mugs that you can get that says world's most okayest mum.
Oh.
And that's how I feel. I don't care about being the best mum. I'm just like, even Willow, she goes, Mum, you're the bestest mum. And I was like, yeah, you don't know all the mums in the world. I'm like, I'm okay. Because I don't want her to feel like she has to be the best at anything to be okay. I know it's a silly example and she's just being cute. And I'm like, you know, smushing her dreams. But I'm like, I'm okay. And that's okay. I don't think I'm all that. I don't need to be.
Yes.
And neither do you. No, none of us require perfection in any way. Money doesn't have a height limit, weight limit, perfection test.
I love that.
You know, we just think that, you think of like, if you lined up the 100 richest men, they're allowed to be old, fat, ugly, normal looking, dad bods. You line up what we think the richest women have to look like. We've all got this idea in ourselves. We have to be perfect. We have to be a mix of Mother Teresa, Princess Diana, and a supermodel, and then we'll be worthy.
Says, I won't get out of bed for less than $20,000 a day.
Exactly. And it's like, men are allowed to be just all sorts and be rich. And let's claim that as well, that it's okay for us to be however we are and be wealthy.
Or dodgy, whatever.
And you know what?
Whatever.
And I think, you know, the theme that's come through for me of what you're saying is, let's be rich, let's be wealthy, let's be kind, let's be loving, and let's have massive social impact. And it's totally doable to be able to have all of those things and be all of those things.
And that's what this series is all about. So we thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Yeah.
This is all about science and spirituality, and that it's not one or the other. It's how do they come together, because all of that is just about being human and being more superhuman. So thank you for being the launch of our new spirituality science kind of series. It's been amazing. Thank you.
Well, thanks guys. Have a great day. I'm off to get a mammogram. That's going to be fun.
Good luck.
The reality.
The reality. Exactly.
Oh, bye.
All right.
Guys,
Bye.
bye.
Bye for now.